Frank Miller sat on his front porch as the sun went down over his wheat fields. At 72 years old, his back hurt most days, but he still loved watching the sky change colors. His old border collie Rex lay at his feet, gray around the muzzle. Just like Frank was gray around the temples, the farm had been quiet for 3 years now. Too quiet. Helen used to sit in the chair next to him, talking about her flower garden or the book she was reading. No, Frank just sat alone, listening to the wind blow through the wheat and Rex's slow breathing. Dark clouds were moving in from the west. Frank could smell rain coming. He stood up slowly, his knees creaking like old door hinges. Rex lifted his head and looked at him with tired brown eyes. "Come on, boy," Frank said. "Let's get inside before it starts raining." They walked into the small farmhouse. Frank had built it himself 40 years ago when he and Helen first bought the land. It was simple but solid, with white walls and blue curtains Helen had sewn. Everything still smelled like her perfume, even after all this time. Frank made himself a simple dinner of soup and bread. He sat at the kitchen table where he and Helen used to eat together. The empty chair across from him seemed to stare back at him. Rex lay on his bed in the corner, already asleep. The storm hit around 9 o'clock. Thunder shook the windows and lightning lit up the sky like camera flashes. Frank had seen plenty of storms in his 72 years, but this one felt different. The lightning was brighter, more blue than white. The thunder sounded strange, like something was tearing through the air. Frank was washing his dinner dishes when he saw it. A brilliant flash of light streaked across the sky, much brighter than any lightning. It moved in a straight line from east to west, leaving a trail of sparks behind it. Then it disappeared behind the hills in his north field. "What in the world?" Frank said to himself. Rex was awake now, standing by the window and whining. Dog's ears were flat against his head, and his tail was tucked between his legs. Frank grabbed his flashlight and his old raincoat. He had served in Vietnam 50 years ago, and his soldier instincts were telling him to go look. Maybe it was a plane crash. Maybe someone needed help. The rain was coming down hard as Frank walked across his fields. His boots sank into the mud. With every step, a flashlight beam danced around in front of him as he made his way toward the north field. Rex followed close behind, still whining softly. Frank smelled smoke before he saw anything. Then his flashlight found the crater. It was about 20 feet wide and perfectly round, like someone had dug it with a giant spoon. Steam was rising. From the hole, and the dirt around the edges was black and burned. At the bottom of the crater was something that made Frank stop walking. It was not a plane or a meteor. It was smooth and silver, about the size of a small car but shaped like an egg. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface, pulsing like a heartbeat. Frank had seen a lot of things in his life, but nothing like this. His hands shook as he climbed down into the crater. The mud was warm under his feet, warmer than it should have been. The silver object hummed quietly, like a refrigerator running, as Frank got closer. He saw that part of the object was transparent. Through the clear section, he could see something inside, something that looked like a person, but wrong somehow. The skin was pale blue, and the face was too delicate, too perfect. Frank's heart pounded in his chest. He knew he should call the police or the military. This was bigger than him, bigger than his small farm. But something stopped him. The figure inside looked young, maybe just a teenager. And it looked hurt. The storm was getting worse. Lightning crashed all around them, and the rain was turning to sleet. If Frank left to get help, whoever was in this thing might die before he got back. Frank found what looked like a door or opening on the side of the object. He pressed his hand against it, and it felt warm and smooth like glass. The symbols around. The door began to glow brighter, and suddenly the door slid open with a soft hiss. Warm air flowed out, carrying a smell like flowers and electricity. Frank pointed his flashlight inside and gasped. The figure was definitely a person, but unlike any person he had ever seen. It was a girl, probably 16 or 17 years old. Her skin was the color of pale blue ice, and her hair was white as snow. Strange silver markings covered her face and arms like tattoos, but they seemed to move and shimmer in the light. She was unconscious and breathing slowly. Her clothes looked like they were made of metal and cloth woven together. There was purple blood on her forehead from a cut above her left eye. Frank had seen enough wounded soldiers in Vietnam to know when someone needed help fast. He did not care if she was human or something else. She was hurt. She was young. And she was alone in a storm. That was enough for him. "It's okay," Frank said quietly, even though she could not hear him. "I'm going to help you." Frank carefully lifted the girl out of the strange pod. She was lighter than he expected, and her skin felt warm despite its strange color. Rex sniffed at her feet but did not bark. The old dog seemed to understand that she was not dangerous. Carrying the girl was hard work for Frank's old back, but he managed to get her out of the crater and across the field to his house. The rain soaked them both, but Frank kept moving. Inside his house, he laid her on the couch in his living room and covered her with one of Helen's quilts. The girl's breathing was steady but shallow. The cut on her head had stopped bleeding, but Frank cleaned it gently with warm water and put a bandage on it. He had learned basic first aid in the army. Some things never left you. As Frank sat in his chair watching the strange girl sleep, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. She was clearly not human, but she looked so young and helpless. Rex lay on the floor next to the couch, as if he was guarding her. Outside, the storm was finally ending. Frank could see the first hint of dawn through his kitchen window. A few hours he would need to figure out what to do. But for now, he just watched over the blue-skinned girl, who had fallen from the sky into his quiet life. Frank Miller had been alone for 3 years. Now, suddenly, he was not alone anymore. The blue-skinned girl woke up slowly on the second day. Frank was sitting in his chair reading the newspaper when he heard a soft sound from the couch. He looked over and saw her violet eyes open for the first time. They were the most beautiful eyes he had ever seen, but they were full of fear. She sat up quickly and looked around the room with panic. When she saw Frank, she pressed herself against the back of the couch and made a sound that was almost like crying. Her hands moved to her throat, and Frank could see the silver markings on her arms glowing faintly. "It's okay," Frank said in his gentlest voice. He'd used the same tone with frightened animals on his farm. "You're safe here. I won't hurt you." The girl tilted her head like she was listening carefully, but Frank could tell she did not understand his words. She pointed to herself and said something in a musical language that sounded like wind chimes. Then she pointed at Frank and waited. Frank pointed to himself. "Frank," he said slowly. "My name is Frank." The girl tried to copy the sound. "FR she said, her voice soft and strange. Then she pointed to herself again and said what sounded like Zara. "Zara?" Frank repeated, and the girl nodded. Her fear seemed to lessen a little when he said her name correctly. Over the next few days, Frank learned that Zara was incredibly smart. She picked up English words faster than anyone he had ever seen. She pointed at things around the house, and Frank would tell her what they were called. Within a week, she could say simple sentences. "Frank good," she would say, or "a Rex soft dog." She seemed to especially love learning the names of things in Helen's garden. "Flower pretty," she said one morning, touching a rose with one blue finger. Frank noticed that Zara was different from humans in many ways. She only needed to sleep for about 4 hours each night, but she spent long periods sitting in the sunlight that came through the windows.
Ow.
She would close her eyes and hold her face up to the sun like a plant growing toward the light. Sun food. For Zara, she explained when Frank asked about it. She showed him how the silver markings on her skin grew brighter when she sat in sunlight. "Zara, people need sun food to live." Frank made sure to open all the curtains every morning so she could get enough light. He also learned that Zara could not eat meat, but she loved vegetables and fruits. She was amazed by the simple food from his garden. "Frank grow good food," she said, eating a tomato like it was the most delicious thing in the world. "Zara people grow food in sky gardens. It's very beautiful, but not taste like Frank food." As Zara's English got better, she began to tell Frank about her home. Her people were called Viridians, and they lived on a planet with floating cities and crystal gardens. They were peaceful people who loved art, music, and growing things. Zara's father had been a scientist who studied plants. "War come to Zara home," she said one evening, as they sat on the porch. Her voice was sad, and the silver markings on her face seemed dimmer. "Bad people want Zara planet. Zara people run away in big ships." Frank listened quietly as Zara told him about the attack on the refugee ships. Her family had put her in an emergency pod when their ship was hit. She was supposed to go to a safe planet where other Viridians were waiting, but something went wrong with the pod's navigation. Zara pod broken. "Come to Frank planet instead," she said. Zara family, gone now. All alone. Frank felt his heart break for this young girl who had lost everything. He knew what it felt like to be alone. "You're not alone now," he told her. "Have me and Rex." Zara smiled for the first time since she had arrived. It was a beautiful smile that made her whole face light up. "Frank like Zara father," she said, "kind and good. Zara, happy here." Frank was surprised to realize that he was happy too. For the first time in 3 years, he had a reason to get up in the morning, besides just taking care of the farm. Zara helped him with his work, even though her blue skin and silver markings meant she had to stay hidden when anyone else was around. Zara turned out to be amazing with plants. She could look at his wheat and tell him exactly what nutrients the soil needed. She showed him how to arrange his crops in patterns that helped them grow better. Under her guidance, Frank's farm began producing more food than it had in years. "Zara father, teach about plant science," she explained. All Viridian children learned to make things grow, but their peaceful life together faced problems. About 3 weeks after Zara's arrival, Frank noticed helicopters flying over his farm more often than usual. Men in suits came to his door asking questions about the strange lights people had reported seeing the night of the storm. "Just lightning," Frank told them every time. "Nothing unusual here." Frank started being very careful about when Zara could go outside. She could only work in the garden early in the morning or late in the evening when no one was likely to see her during the day. She stayed inside reading Frank's books and learning more English. Zara loved Helen's old books, especially the ones about gardening and cooking. Frank found her crying one day while reading a cookbook Helen had written notes. "In Helen sounds like good person," Zara said, wiping her purple tears away. Zara wished could meet Frank's wife. "She would have loved you," Frank said, and he meant it. Helen had always wanted children, but they had never been able to have any. She would have been so happy to have a daughter like Zara, even one who fell from the sky as autumn turned to winter. Frank and Zara developed routines together. She helped him with morning chores, sitting in the sunlight while he fed the chickens. They cooked simple meals together, with Zara teaching Frank recipes from her planet that used earth vegetables. In the evenings, they sat by the fire while Frank told her stories about his life and Helen. Rex loved Zara completely. The old dog followed her around the house and slept by her feet every night. "Rex understands Zara not human," she said one day, but Rex not care. "Dogs have good hearts," Frank agreed. Dogs were better than most people at seeing what really mattered. Rex could tell that Zara was kind and gentle, and that was enough for him. Frank knew their quiet life could not last forever. The government people were getting more persistent with their questions. But for now, in his small farmhouse with an AICL, alien girl who called him father, and a dog who loved them both, Frank Miller was happier than he had been in years. Agent Carter arrived at Frank's farm 2 hours later with a tall man in a white coat. Frank watched them through his window as they walked up his front steps. His heart was beating fast, but he knew he had made the only choice that could save. Zara Frank opened the door before they could knock. Agent Carter looked surprised to see how worried he appeared. "Mr. Miller, this is Dr. Kevin Barnes," she said. "He's our team's medical specialist." "Now what kind of help do you need?" Frank stepped aside to let them in. "Before you see her, I need you to understand something. She's just a kid. She's hurt and scared and far from home. Whatever you're thinking about doing, remember that, Agent." Carter and Dr. Barnes exchanged glances. They followed Frank into his living room, where Zara was lying on the couch under Helen's quilt. Rex was sitting on the floor next to her, his head resting on his paws. When Agent Carter saw Zara, she stopped walking and stared. Dr. Barnes moved forward immediately, his doctor instincts taking over. "My God, Agent Carter whispered. She's real. Dr. Barnes knelt next to the couch and looked at Zara carefully. Her blue skin was almost gray now, and her breathing was shallow and slow. The silver markings on her face were barely glowing. What's her condition? Dr. Barnes asked Frank. She says she needs minerals that don't exist on Earth, Frank explained. She's been getting weaker for days. I don't know how to help her. Dr. Barnes gently touched Zara's forehead. She opened her violet eyes and looked at him with confusion and fear. Frank quickly moved to her side. It's okay, Zara, Frank said softly. These people are here to help you. Frank, trust them. Zara asked in a weak voice. Frank looked at Agent Carter, then at Dr. Barnes. I think so. We don't have any other choice. Dr. Barnes was already pulling medical equipment from his bag. I need to run some tests. Can she tell me what kind of minerals she needs? Zara struggled to sit up. With Frank's help, she managed to explain about the special supplements her people used. Dr. Barnes listened carefully, asking questions about her physiology and what made Viridians different from humans. I think I understand, Dr. Barnes said. After hearing everything, your body processes certain elements differently than ours. We might be able to synthesize what you need, but I'll need to analyze your blood and some samples from your escape pod. Agent Carter had been quiet during all of this, but now she stepped forward. Mr. Miller, why didn't you contact us immediately when you found her? Frank looked at Zara, who was watching him with trusting eyes. Because I was afraid you'd treat her like a thing instead of a person. She's not a weapon or a tool. She's a kid who lost her family. We're not monsters, Mr. Miller, Agent Carter said. We want to understand, not harm. Over the next several hours, Dr. Barnes worked frantically to help Zara. He analyzed samples from her pod and tested her blood. Agent Carter called in more equipment and specialists. Frank was amazed to see how quickly they mobilized to save a life. Even an alien life. By evening, Dr. Barnes had created a synthetic version of the minerals Zara needed. He gave her the first dose through an IV, while Frank held her hand.
This
Should help, Dr. Barnes said. But she'll need regular treatments until we can find a more permanent solution. The treatment worked. Within hours, Zara's skin began to return to its normal blue color, and the silver markings started glowing brighter. By the next morning, she was sitting up and talking normally again. Agent Carter sat down with Frank and Zara that afternoon. To discuss their situation, Frank was prepared for the worst, but what Agent Carter said surprised him. Officially, my report will say that the energy readings were from a classified military experiment, she said. As far as the government is concerned, nothing unusual happened here. Frank stared at her. What does that mean? It means Zara gets to stay with you, Agent Carter explained. We'll create legal documents showing that she's your adopted granddaughter. Her unusual appearance can be explained as a rare genetic condition. Zara looked confused by the English words she didn't understand, so Frank explained it to her in simpler terms. Her face lit up with joy. Zara can stay with Frank forever, she asked. If that's what you both want, Agent Carter said with a small smile. Why are you doing this? Frank asked. Why not take her to study her, or use her technology? Agent Carter was quiet for a moment, because I saw how you took care of her. I saw how she looks at you like you're her father. Some things are more important than science or national security. Sometimes the right thing to do is just let people live in peace. 6 months later, Frank stood in his kitchen making breakfast. For his granddaughter Zara, that's what everyone in town knew her as now. The shy girl with the rare skin condition, who lived with old Frank Miller and helped him run his farm. Zara had learned to use makeup to make her skin look more human when she went to town. She wore contact lenses to make her eyes look brown instead of violet. But at home, on the farm, she could be herself. She was enrolled in the local high school now, where her incredible intelligence in science classes made her teachers think she was a genius. She was planning to study agriculture in college so she could help other farmers grow better crops. Frank had never been happier. His farm was more successful than ever, thanks to Zara's knowledge. More importantly, his house was full of life. And laughter again. Zara called him Grandpa Frank, and she had learned to make Helen's favorite cookies from the old recipe book. They visited Helen's grave together every month. Zara would leave flowers and tell Helen about school and the farm. Frank liked to think that Helen would have loved Zara as much as he did. Rex was getting old, but he was content. He spent his days following Zara around the farm, happy to have someone young to protect again. As Frank watched Zara work in Helen's old garden, humming a song from her home planet, he thought about how strange life could be. A year ago he had been a lonely old man waiting to die. Now he had a daughter who fell from the stars, and a future full of possibilities, sometimes the most important. Discoveries weren't about technology or science. Sometimes they were about love, family, and finding peace in unexpected places. Winter came early that year. Frank woke up one December morning to find snow covering his fields and 3 black cars parked at the end of his driveway. His stomach dropped when he saw them. He had been expecting this day, but that did not make it any easier. Zara, he called quietly up the stairs. We have visitors. You need to hide. Zara appeared at the top of the stairs wearing one of Helen's old robes. She had gotten much better at understanding danger over the past 2 months. Without asking questions, she disappeared into the secret space Frank had built for her behind the bedroom closet. Frank opened his front door before the visitors could knock. A woman in a dark suit stood on his porch with 2 men behind her. She was young, maybe 40, with short brown hair and serious eyes. Mr. Miller, I'm Agent Lisa Carter with the Department of Unusual Phenomena, she said, showing him an official badge. We need to ask you some questions about unusual activity in this area. Frank kept his face calm, the way he had learned to do in Vietnam when enemy soldiers were nearby. Already told the other folks who came by, nothing unusual happens here, just farming. Agent Carter smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Mr. Miller, we have satellite data showing energy readings from your property on October 15th. Very unusual energy readings. Don't know anything about that, Frank said. Maybe your satellites are broken. The agent stepped closer. Mr. Miller, if you're hiding something, we will find it. It would be better for everyone if you cooperate now. Frank looked her straight in the eyes. Agent Carter, I'm an old man who grows wheat and takes care of his dog. That's all there is to find here. After the agents left, Frank knew they would be back. They were not going to give up. He needed to be smarter about keeping Zara safe. That night, Frank taught Zara how to use the emergency escape route he had planned. If government people came to the house, she could climb out the back window and hide in the old barn until it was safe. Frank worried, Zara said, touching his arm gently. Zara caused trouble for Frank. No, Frank said firmly. You're not trouble. You're family. We'll figure this out together. Over the next few weeks, Agent Carter's team set up a base in town. They questioned everyone who lived near Frank's farm. They flew drones over his property and set up sensors along his fence line. Frank had to be more careful than ever, but Zara was not just hiding. She was helping Frank in ways he had never expected. Using her knowledge of Viridian technology, she helped him improve his farm equipment. She showed him how to adjust his tractor engine to run more efficiently and how to modify his irrigation system to use less water but grow more crops. Viridian people good at making things work better, she explained as she tinkered with his old radio. Always look for a better way to do things. The improvements were subtle enough that no one would notice unless they looked very carefully. Frank's farm was running better than it ever had. Even in winter, Frank also discovered that Zara was incredibly good at staying hidden when she needed to be. Her blue skin and silver markings could change color slightly when she concentrated. She could not look completely human, but she could become much harder to see in shadows or among plants. Viridian children learned to hide from predators, she said, useful skill on dangerous planets. Despite all their precautions, Frank could see that the constant hiding was wearing on Zara. She loved being outside and working with plants. But now she could only do it at night, or very early in the morning. The lack of sunlight was making her weaker. Zara needed more sun food, she admitted one day when Frank found her sitting by the window looking pale and tired, but too dangerous to go outside. Frank felt helpless. He was trying to protect her, but the protection itself was hurting her. He started opening all the windows on sunny days, even in the cold, so she could get as much light as possible while staying inside. Things got worse just after Christmas. Zara woke up one morning feeling very sick. Her skin had turned a worrying shade of gray-blue, and she could barely stand up. The silver markings on her arms were flickering weakly like dying light bulbs. "What's wrong?" Frank asked, helping her sit down on the couch. "Zara needs special minerals," she said weakly. "Minerals from Viridian planet. Earth minerals not right for Zara's body." Frank felt panic rise in his chest. "What kind of minerals? Maybe I can find them somewhere." Zara shook her head sadly. "Only exist on Viridian worlds. Zarapod, have emergency. Supplies, but all used up now." Frank realized with growing horror that Zara was slowly dying. Her body needed things that did not exist on Earth. All his protecting and hiding might not matter if he could not find a way to help her. For 3 days, Zara got sicker and sicker. Frank tried everything he could think of. He drove to every pharmacy and health store within 50 miles looking for anything that might help. Called his old army doctor friends, asking about rare mineral supplements without explaining why he needed them. Nothing worked. Zara was fading away, and Frank was running out of time and options. On the 4th day, Frank made the hardest decision of his life. He could not save Zara by himself, and watching her die slowly was worse than any risk from the government agents. He picked up his phone and called the number Agent Carter had left with him. "Agent Carter," he said when she answered. "This is Frank Miller. I need your help." There was a long pause. "You ready to tell me the truth, Mr. Miller?" Frank looked over at Zara, who was lying on the couch barely conscious. Rex was sitting next to her, whining softly and nuzzling her hand. "I have someone here who needs medical help," Frank said. "Someone your doctors might be able to help. But I want your word that no one gets hurt, Mr. Miller. I can't make promises until I know what we're dealing with." Frank closed his eyes and made the choice that might save Zara's life or destroy everything they had built together. "You better come alone," he said, "and bring a doctor."